The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Much to the dismay of people who have been emailing me, as I mentioned on the regular show, for years, saying there will never be self-driving cars. We have them in Boston now. Starting a few days ago, some passengers of the ride-sharing service called Lyft will be able to go through the seaport area in driverless cars as part of an agreement between the self-driving car company Nutonomy and Lyft. This is going to be limited to areas where the Nutonomy cars are permitted to drive, which is not the entire city of Boston. It's mostly the Seaport neighborhood and South Station, which is not that far from David Pakman Show studios. And Nutonomy already ran pilot tests last month. They brought a bunch of passengers to South Station from the Seaport area. It's not clear who is going to be able to select these rides. Nutonomy says it's going to be select passengers, but it's not clear how the select passengers are chosen. So it's here, Pat. I mean, you and I, even though I don't think either of us regularly take lifts between 2 points within this relatively small area, I don't know that I ever have, we could conceivably get a self-driving lift.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And it actually makes me think about if people would be more willing to use Uber and Lyft if they're autonomous cars, because safety for a lot of people is a concern. You don't really know who this person is, who you're getting into his car. I mean, you'd eliminate that altogether in this case.
You do, although you're then basically saying I'm going to trust the strangers I also don't know who programmed this thing. But at least they can't sexually assault you, as has happened with a variety of Uber and Lyft drivers. So I guess it depends what kind of safety is most important to you. I would have no problem at this point getting into one of these Nutonomy Lyft partner deals if I got the opportunity in Boston.
Yeah, if you fit the qualifications, although who knows what these qualifications are?
I don't know. Maybe it's people who have been on Lyft for a long time, have taken a certain number of rides, regularly take rides in this. I really have no idea. It's possible that they also had to opt into something. I don't know.
It's also interesting that they chose the Seaport area and South Station because there's a lot of pedestrian traffic. And I'd imagine that because they're just unveiling this now, I mean, people are going to be apprehensive about it, either getting into the cars or just knowing that autonomous cars are driving around, even though there's no real reason to be. So why would they choose an area with a lot of foot traffic? Wouldn't be, choosing somewhere that's more remote make a little bit more sense?
It probably would, but what I'm guessing is that in order to even start testing in Boston, Nutonomy had to determine, get approval for some specific area where they could do tests. And maybe it's as simple as they have an office in this neighborhood so that this is where they decided to do it. I really have no idea how they came up with that area, but yeah, you would think that they would want to start somewhere a little less densely populated. That's one of the most populated areas of downtown Boston.
Yeah, it is interesting. And of course, humans are much more likely to get into an accident than the self-driving cars, but people still are going to be apprehensive about it, not knowing those statistics.
Yeah. And not to mention what I have not read, and I'm sure it's explained somewhere, I believe you still have to have a driver sitting in the driver's seat. That's the other thing.
Oh.
And it's not actually mentioned by this article, but my understanding was that every single place that on city and public roads is testing self-driving cars, that you still have to have somebody able to take control of the vehicle if necessary, even though 3 articles I read about it don't mention that.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder when, if ever, they'll phase out the controls that you would have. Because, I mean, I guess in the case that the car was to malfunction or, you'd have to take over control of the car, you need the steering wheel, you need the shifter and everything. But eventually, will we get to a point where you don't need that stuff? It'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think you will. I think, and in fact, some of the designs I've seen are for cars that are fully autonomous. Once you remove, first of all, they'd probably be electric. And once you remove the need for the steering wheel and all of that, you could actually have 2 seats that face each other.
Yeah.
Sort of like in the back of a smaller size limo or something like that. And that's a game changer.
That is
for
cool.
sure.
So like the back seats of an SUV, sometimes they'll swivel around. I'd be into that.
Yeah. Well, you could do it any way you want. It's the future, and we're there now, I guess, if you believe that this is real. If you believe that this isn't actually happening, then I guess we're never going to have self-driving cars in Boston. Speaking of AI, Google Street View's AI can now predict the political and racial makeup of places that it drives through. It's more complicated than this, but one example is areas, for example, with more sedans than pickup trucks are overwhelmingly more likely to vote Democratic. Areas with more pickup trucks than sedans are very likely to be Republican voting districts. And there's more to that as well. And I think that this is a very interesting area, the way in which data can be used to indicate all sorts of different things about your surroundings. Some other examples are if you see higher percentages of Honda and Toyota, it's very likely that you are in a more significantly Asian neighborhood. If you see Chryslers, Buicks, and Oldsmobiles, it is more likely that you are in a more heavily African American neighborhood. Pickup trucks and Volkswagens are associated with white neighborhoods. And as I mentioned, sedans associated with Democratic voting precincts, Republican leading precincts, most associated specifically with extended cab pickup trucks. This is very interesting. What you can do with it, I don't really know, but I'm sure somebody will figure out a way to monetize this, if nothing else.
Yeah, or maybe even the US Census. That's such a big expenditure for us every 10 years, having to pay people to walk around and canvass and collect all this information. If we can do it with AI and something that we all have access to, like Google Street View, I mean, there's probably an opportunity there.
Yeah, you couldn't do the census with these, but what you could do is cross-check if some data you get really doesn't make sense. Like, let's say Google Street View AI determines, to pick one of these, that pickup trucks and Volkswagens are associated with white neighborhoods with some very high confidence factor. And then you start getting census data from some neighborhoods that, based on the vehicles, should be more significantly white. But the census data indicates that they are not nearly that white. That might allow you
Yeah.
to say, let's explore why that neighborhood has a discrepancy with like the Google AI data or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
It
or
might be interesting like that.
if you're running a political campaign too, and you're, say, a Democrat, you'll know maybe to avoid areas that have a bunch of pickup trucks, I guess, or vice versa. If you're a Republican and you find an area with a bunch of sedans, there's something to that, I think.
Yeah, although more than likely you would already know if you're running a Republican or Democratic
Right.
campaign, which are the let me put it a different way. If you're running a Democratic or Republican campaign and you don't already know what the political orientation of a district is, and you have to start figuring it out based on what cars are driving around, you're probably not going to do that well in the election. But there's probably third factors that you can add in that might actually be really useful for data mining.
Yeah. I mean, you're already losing that point if you don't know, I guess.
NASA is going to make an important announcement about a discovery made by the Kepler Space Telescope. It's been searching for alien worlds since 2009. The conference is going to be this Thursday, December 14th. The scientists are ready to make an announcement, and there is speculation that it could be about life beyond the reaches of Earth, but we don't know. It might not. It might be most often, Pat, when there are these announcements, it's about potentially habitable worlds in other parts of our universe. And then we're told it's 40 light years away and we'll probably never get there. But every time we hear about one of these announcements teased, it's always possible that there might be some bacterium that has been found elsewhere or something like that, which would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think to the average person, this is the way to tease it, right? Because they're not going to get as excited about anything other than life on another planet. We already have
Yeah.
seen these planets that fit that Goldilocks zone. And so, what else can we really find out that's going to be too exciting for us other than the fact that there is life on it?
I will say that last month we learned that the Kepler data had revealed 20 planets that are in that Goldilocks zone, which in terms of distance from the sun and temperature and whatever else could potentially host life. So what I'm hoping is that they wouldn't make a big deal out of announcing that the number of potentially habitable worlds has gone from 20 to 21, because that would be such an
Yeah.
underwhelming announcement. I'm hoping that it's something
I
else.
mean, that's what I'm thinking about. What else could it possibly be that would warrant having this big announcement like this and all this PR coverage behind it, too?
Could be water. What about that? Like if they found
Well,
liquid or some other form of water somewhere, I don't know.
I mean,
That would be
we already
something.
have that, right? I remember in 2015 there was a big deal made out of finding ice on Mars, and there was a lead up a lot in a lot of the ways the same way that we're having now. You find out that they're going to make this big announcement a week before, and then it turns out to be actually what people were speculating it was going to be.
Yes, although if I recall correctly, and I know I'm getting now into speculative territory, and I know people in our membership and Patreon following will correct me. I believe that when the water announcement was made on Mars, it was not flowing
No,
H2O the way we think of water. It was a sort of different form of water, and it was no longer flowing. It was ice, right? Am I
yeah,
remembering that
there's
correctly?
some ice, and I guess there were, I mean, ways in the rock to understand that there was at one point water there flowing, but it could have
Right.
been thousands of years ago. Just
Yeah.
evidence of it.
I actually believe that if and when there is ever an announcement that we've found intelligent alien life, I think it's going to be sort of like a moment of reckoning for Homo sapiens. It's going to be a moment of reckoning for the religious. It's going to be a moment of reckoning for the geopolitical situation, as I mentioned today on the regular show. I don't know for sure that it will be good, but I think it's going to fundamentally change. It's going to be one of those moments where it becomes life as we knew it, human history up until that point,
Yeah.
and human history from that point forward.
And it's interesting that you say intelligent life too, because if we make this discovery, it's probably just going to be like bacteria or like a single-celled organism of some kind. Um, but that would still upend the whole theory about how life was created by a lot of these religious folks, right? I mean, the whole biblical story would have to be changed and amended in some way.
But then they would still go to that's not intelligent life. I think more than likely the first finding of extraterrestrial life is going to be either some bacteria or some tiny inchworm or
Protozoa.
something like that, protozoa or something like that, and that might even be it for a very long time. But it would still be sort of proof of concept that there is life outside the earth. I hope I'm alive to see it. I really do. That's one of those things that I would like to be around for.
Yeah. And life on Mars. We may
Human
be the
life, that
life
is.
that's on Mars, but life
We
on Mars
probably
anyway.
will. I think more than likely when we discover life on Mars, it will be because we put it there. But we will see. By the way, not to get back to it, something from the regular show. What do you think is behind? What is the motivation for these people who insist we're never going to Mars? Like, do you think that they don't want us to go to Mars? Do you think that they believe that it's just overblown and that we're not
Um,
really going to be able to?
I think they're trying to sound like the more reasonable person in the conversation, the one who's more sound-minded, I guess.
Maybe that's it. That's the instinct I got with the self-driving car stuff. And even though I joke about all the people that email me saying there won't ever be self-driving cars, even though there already are, the number has gone down significantly. But I still do get people at this point emailing me and saying there will never be self-driving cars is like saying there will never be cars. It's like
Well,
we already have them. You know
they
what I
they
mean?
would have to move the goalposts at this point. I mean, it's no longer that there'll never be self-driving cars. It's going to be, they're not going to be ubiquitous. They're not going to be legal. I mean, they can push down the road a little bit longer, but not too
Yeah.
far.
They can move the goalposts the way people have on the Trump-Russia investigation, so to speak.
Yes.
All right, that is it for today. I'll be back in the studio tomorrow. Should we disclose at this point, Pat, the plan through the end of the year for the show? Would this be an appropriate time?
Yeah, I don't see why not, right?
Okay.
I think we got it.
Well, we've got a full week of shows this week, and we've got a full week of shows next week. Then we have Monday, the 2 weeks from today, Monday the 25th, is a federal holiday. And I say that because we're not going to be taking Christmas Day off because we believe that religious holidays should be federal holidays or whatever. We're taking it off because it is a federal holiday. The following Monday is also a federal holiday. So we're doing what we often do at the end of the year and taking that last week off altogether. Okay, so the last new show will be Friday, December 22nd. Then that week of Christmas, we will be off. And then New Year's Day, we will be off. And then we will return with the 2018 season of the David Pakman Show on January 2nd of 2018. And we already have, incredibly, Pat and I were talking before the show today, we already have a bunch of stuff booked for January. and more getting booked all the time. We are moving ahead with some long form pieces. It should be a good start to the year.
It's interesting you're saying seasons now. This would be like the 13th season of the David Pakman Show. I mean, a lot of shows don't have that long of a run.
It's kind of tongue in cheek. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm jokingly calling it the next season. I don't know. Maybe it's a crazy phrase to use. That's it for today. I'll talk to you tomorrow in studio.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.